What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and this video, while it probably won't affect anyone personally, unless you actually do live in Ireland and this is relevant to you, in which case let me know, because I'd be really surprised about that. But even if it doesn't, I'm sure that some of you can relate to this video in some way, shape or form. So what this video is actually going to be about is it's kind of a trip down memory lane, looking at fond remembrances and just things like that. And the reason for this video and why I'm making it is that yesterday my favorite convention for mainly focused on anime and gaming, but it does do other stuff as well. They actually announced that this year is going to be their last year. So there's going to be no convention next year, and that kind of really bums me out. Simply because I'm not pissed off. I'm just a little bit unhappy about it. I'm not unhappy at them. I'm just unhappy that it's ending, if you will. I mean, I loved attending it for the last few years. It's just been brilliant fun. I've gone for this will actually be my 4th year going, and every year I go with 2 of my friends, and we just have an amazing time. It's such a brilliant time up there. We attend all the days. We're there on the Friday evening, we're there Saturday, and we're there Sunday for the panels, some of the workshops. There's tons of other stuff going on, but they're the guests, the guest panels too. Some of the gaming stuff. There's just so much to do there, and it's really fantastic. And it kind of bums me out because there's so few places for, say, anime and gaming focused stuff, and people here have very little places to use as an outlet for that. Now sure, it's a lot more accepted nowadays for anime and gaming and just nerd culture in general, because I know when I was growing up, geez, I sound old, but I know when I was growing up that wasn't a deal at all. Because the reason why I mentioned this is that I remember about 10 plus years ago, Jesus, now I do feel really old. I remember talking to all these people online, all the people I'd spend a shitload of time talking anime with, talking manga with, talking games with, all this kind of shit. Most of them were American, some were Canadian, and various other countries. But most of the North American ones would always talk about how they could go to these conventions and they'd have all these anime and game conventions and stuff like that. I was always really jealous because we never had anything like that here. Way back then, you'd find maybe 5 people in an entire town that would be into like anime and games and stuff. It was always a real kind of, I won't call it a taboo subject, but it was always the haha, you're a loser, you're a nerd kind of thing. I never had an issue with that, simply because I just don't give a shit what people think of me. But it was always very condescending for other people. Like, they'd always be afraid to come out and say it out loud that they could talk about, yeah, I love anime, or yeah, I'm a big whatever manga fan, or anything like that. And just because back then it was culture was very different versus nowadays, when all this stuff is cool, so most people will wear it loud and proud at this point. But yeah, nowadays that this is actually being cancelled, it bums me out because of my personal investment in it, as well as the closure of an outlet for all these other people and fans. And yeah, that's kind of a bummer, especially because I remember finding out about, I still remember when I found out about this convention for the first time. I'll get into that in a minute. Before I actually get into all that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So the convention name is Eirtakon. Now, this is kind of a mishmash between the general convention and what would essentially be the Irish word for Ireland, which would be Éireann. So you mix the two of them together, you get Eir. The con makes more sense. A lot of people, a lot of Americans and Canadians and stuff like that, they see the name and they butcher it horribly. But that gets all taken care of anyway. But it was started in 2004 by Dublin City University, and it was started by their Anime and Manga Society. So that was started in 2004, and here I am talking about it in 2016, where they're going to have their final one this year. So when you think about it, 2004, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This is going to be their 13th Eirtakon, their 13th convention. And I know a few years ago, maybe like, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, they actually moved to a larger venue, and then they moved to a larger venue again. And now, the very first year I ever attended, which was 2013, they actually moved to their biggest venue ever, which is where they still host it every year up to now, which is it's in a large convention center in one of the stadiums here in well, I say here in Dublin City, but here in Ireland. I don't live in Dublin, but you get the idea. So the cool thing about it is there's so much there. They invite, obviously there's all types of guests. There's, say, cosplay guests. Recently there's more YouTubers. There's obviously voice actors and producers and directors, ADR, things like that, as well as there's all sorts of things like that. There's also like gaming areas, competitions. There's panels, talks, workshops, etc. As well as some of the cool stuff is they hold some of the national or the international Ireland Irish leg of the cosplay contests for the Euro qualifiers. So that's pretty cool for anyone who's actually interested in cosplay in Ireland. It actually gives them somewhere to progress and be properly taken seriously, which is fantastic. Never cosplayed myself. I'd love to do it, but I've got no artistic skill or anything like that at all, because I'd fuck it up completely. So this is where I'm going to lead into two different parts, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to mention how I first found out about Eirtakon 2013. So it was actually in February 2013 when I found this out, and I don't remember what exactly triggered it, but I mean I must have been talking to someone or looking at something online. I still remember sitting there at my computer at the time, and for some reason I typed into Google, I think it was like Irish Anime Conventions or Anime Conventions Ireland. And then I hit enter, and this was the first thing that came up, and I was like, holy shit, there's actually a convention here. So I clicked on it, and then I noticed that it had been going on for like 10 years or so. I'm like, whoa, how have I not known about this? This is crazy. Because years and years ago, I had just given up the fact that I'd given up with the idea that we would ever have a convention to do with like anime or games or anything in Ireland, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. I had always been keeping an eye and watching anime, reading manga, etc., but I just completely given up on the notion that we'd ever have a gathering like this here. And as soon as I saw that, I clicked into it, and I looked around on it was a fairly basic enough website, and I looked around on there, and straight away I booked my ticket. The tickets had apparently only gone on sale like 2 days prior, but I had booked my ticket straight away, and I picked up my phone and I just texted one of my friends and I said, right, November, I don't remember the exact dates. I'm going to guess November 22nd to the 24th. For some reason that's in my head. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I texted him that. I said, right, anime convention, Dublin, these dates, we're going. And he just texts back, he's like, fuck yeah, I'm there. So that was brilliant. And funny enough, a couple of weeks later, like 2 or 3 weeks later, they actually made a big announcement on their website that they were going to have a guest of honor as Troy Baker. So we all know who Troy Baker is at this point. He's an extremely popular voice actor, voices so many things. He's mainly very popular for, say, Joel in The Last of Us. He does Snow in Final Fantasy 13 series. He's a Revolver Ocelot in Metal Gear Solid 5. The list goes on. There's no point in me listing the whole thing off. I'll be here all night. But I remember seeing that announcement was there, and then that blew my mind even more. It's like, not only do we have an anime and gaming convention here in Ireland, we have someone as big as Troy Baker coming over here. What the fuck is going on? I was really hyped for all that anyway, but eventually, unfortunately, he did have to cancel, so that wasn't too bad. But this leads up to the next point I wanted to get into a minute ago, and I'm just going to quickly go over everything that I've seen in Eirtakon for the last few years. Like I said, the first time I did go was in 2013, and I've been going every year since. So I've been there for 2013, 2014, 2015, and I'm going to be there for its final year, 2016. And because of everyone who worked together to put this entire thing together, even before I was attending, I just want to give them a massive thanks, because of people like that and the hard work and dedication they put in. They've allowed things like this to happen, for, not just for me, but for other people as well, just other fans of the entire genre. And it especially holds a place in my heart for a couple of reasons. And that is, one, it was my very first convention ever. I've been to many since, but it was my very first convention ever, the Eirtakon 2013, the very first one I ever attended. And despite Troy Baker cancelling, they got a new guest of honor a couple of months later, and that turned out to be my number one favorite voice actor of all time. So, not to mention meeting him, I'll get into a second on who he actually is now in a minute. Not to mention meeting him, not just meeting him at my first convention, that's a bonus. So, there's first convention, there's meeting him, and there's meeting him at my first convention. So, that's 3 massive bonuses put together. So in 2013, Eirtakon had Steve Bloom. Now, Steve Bloom, I'm sure you know, is massive voice actor. He's one of the top quality voice actors out there, and he's my personal favorite voice actor when it comes down to it. I'm sure you know him from something. He voices almost everything. So if you've played any of the zombies games or zombies modes in Call of Duty games, he's Tank Dempsey. He's most people's favorite character. I'm going to kind of go out there and say I prefer Dr. Rick Toffin myself. But he also voices Orochimaru in Naruto. He voices Mugen from Samurai Champloo. And the main, most important thing for me is he voices Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. Possibly my favorite anime ever. It's kind of like tied, a 2-way tie for my favorite anime ever. One is Ghost in the Shell, the other is Cowboy Bebop. So it's 50-50 neck and neck. And also what was cool that year is they also had another guest, another voice actor, who's Courtney Drapier, and you may or may not remember the name, but she was actually Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite. And because 2013 was obviously when BioShock Infinite released, it was a big high profile title. So it was great to actually have her there. So that was cool. She had they both had separate panels, and they had panels together, and there was so much insight in them there. And funny enough, actually, if you go to the Q&A panel with Steve Bloom from Eirtakon 2013 on YouTube, you can actually see me asking him a question in that video. I won't link you to it, or I won't point myself out or anything. Maybe you can pick me out, but I don't know. It's just fantastic. They also had another guest as well. They weren't just focusing on voice actors. They had Riddle from Riddle's Messy Wardrobe cosplay. I butcher her name if I try to say it properly. It's Ricky Lecote. I don't know. I can never pronounce that. But yeah, she's a badass cosplayer. Funny enough, actually, I had seen a couple of her things previously before I even knew who she was. And I thought, she's like, yeah, that's someone that's really cool looking. And then she turned out to be there. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty funky. And, you know, that was 2013 in a nutshell. So you move up forward, Eirtakon 2014, some more guests. They had Chuck Huber, who's, you may recognize Chuck Huber as the voice of Android 17, or Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho. And he voices a bunch more stuff as well. I mean, we all, if you recognize the name, you know, I don't even need to mention Full Metal Alchemist, that's in there too. They also had Caitlin Glass. So Caitlin Glass obviously comes from the Full Metal Alchemist fame as well, but she's Winry. I'm sure you probably already knew that as well. Or if you're a fighting game fan, she's Cammy from Street Fighter 4. Ton of other stuff as well that she's done, of course, but I'm just mentioning one or two, because if I go through everyone's list of credits, this video is going to be 2 hours long, and I don't want that. And to go with a separate side of it as well, in 2014, they obviously had the two voice actors, and they also had more cosplay, which in 2014 came into the shape of Cortoon, who came with a guest whose name I can also never pronounce. It's Miss Missiriu, or I, I just butcher it. I'm sorry. And yeah, they had some panels based on cosplay and things like that. And they actually came dressed as Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny, which was pretty cool. Then this is when Eirtakon kind of started expanding a little bit as well. So they had voice actors, they had cosplay guests, and they also had a YouTube star. I didn't go to any of her panels personally because I had no interest in I had to look her up beforehand when they announced her, and it's just nothing. She didn't appeal to me. There was someone called Venus Angelic. She's a Swiss YouTuber who was apparently famous for all sorts of makeup tutorials based on the kind of doll and anime appearance and manga appearance style she goes for. So, they're branching out in that aspect. Then 2015 came around as well. The 2015 spread out a bit too thin, if you ask in my opinion. They had for their voice actor guest of honor, they have Michelle Ruff. I'm sure you Rukia from Bleach, which is fucking badass. Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, some of the more recent Resident Evil games. Yoko from Gurren Lagann, and again, I could go on forever, but I won't because this whole thing will take ages if I do, and it's already gone on way too long. They also, from their cosplay guests, they had someone named Nipa Dubs. He's a US cosplayer who his style is very different from some of the other stuff we'd seen, especially as well is that the previous 2 years cosplay guests were female, so it was nice to have a male representative, and it obviously covers a complete different, his side of it covered a different take on what could go into cosplay. Obviously there's a bit of a crossover from just cosplay in general, but to have a male aspect on it too was also nice. Now there was tons of others this year. There was a lot of musical guests and all, but I'm not going to really get into those too much because they'll just drive me mental with trying to explain the whole thing, because literally I don't know, and I would just be reading off the Wikipedia pages. It just doesn't work for me. I don't feel the connection to it. But for this year, so far they've announced there's if Lucy Christian. She big voice actor, ADR and all as well, director, producer kind of things. And I mean, if you look at some of her credits as well, you're looking at Riko, Gunslinger Girl, Nami, One Piece. There's tons more she's done as well. They've also announced a second voice actor guest as well, John Swayze, and this is where some cool stuff comes in. Salvador from Borderlands 2. I don't use Salvador myself. I use Zero, but just the fact is, almost all the dialogue in Borderlands is just fantastic, and to have one of the main characters of Borderlands 2 there is just going to be fucking badass. It's also Undertaker in Black Butler, Hades in Fairy Tail, so much more as well. Personally, he's also, it's kind of a bit abstract, but he's also the announcer in Dragon Half. It's an old anime at this point. One of the first few, I'd say probably one of maybe the first dozen anime I've ever seen. So I'm actually probably going to get him to see if he'll sign that for me, because that's pretty cool. And the cosplay guest this year so far that they've announced is Cardiology Cosplay. Cardiology Cosplay. I think I said that correctly. And they're two UK cosplayers, Vera and Ellie, or Vera and Elle, I should say, from the UK, and they've started cosplaying for the last several years. I believe it's 3 years, and they're they're judging the actual cosplay contest this year for the European qualifiers, which is badass. So there's so much. You can see there's so much variety there. I mean, there's still another 2.5, about 2 months before Eirtakon 2016 actually happens. So there's so much going on that they can still put in there, still announce music guests, more YouTubers, more voice actors, more cosplayers, whatever. There's tons they can actually do. And it just really bums me out that this has to come to an end, because for the last 4 years, 4 years including this year, it's just been an amazing weekend every time. I go to Dublin, I stay up in Dublin for the weekend with my two friends, and like I said, we attend all 3 days. It's just absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere, the community there, some fun little random facts for you as well. The first year I was there, I got talking to this guy. I was in a queue waiting to meet Steve Bloom. And funny enough, actually, I didn't get there to meet him the first day because the queue was absolutely massive and I didn't realize how long it would be. So I got into the queue and like 2 hours passed because he only had a small sign-in session in between panels and talks and stuff like that. And what actually happened was I got to the front of the queue. I was actually number one in the queue outside the room. There was like a dozen people in the room, but I was number one at the outside the room. And that's when they closed the room off. So I was like, okay, these are the final people. I was like, come on, dude, you gotta let me in. But it wouldn't let me in. So funny enough, the next day I queued up like an hour in advance. So his signing was at, I think it was like 4 p.m. or something like that. I was there at like 3 p.m. if not even earlier. And when the queue, funny enough, we weren't the first people there. There was like maybe 4 people in front of me. But funny enough, the guy who was standing behind me was actually the guy who was standing behind me the previous day. So he was second in the queue on the first day, and then he was fifth in the queue on the second day. Funny enough, I've actually ran into him every year since then, and we recognized each other. And we just had a quick little joke about it, said hi, and just left it at that. So just basically someone I met for 1 day a year for the first time for like maybe 1 hour or so. You know, we've just connected on that, and it was a great joke, great time, great fun, great laugh. Fun little fact as well. Every time I've been there, I always bring my Nintendo 3DS of some sort, put it down into Street Pass mode, walk around, connect up some Mii's just for Mii Plaza and things like that. And it's funny, you can actually close your 3DS, wait about 30 seconds, or just like walk 30, 40 feet and open it back up, and your Mii Plaza is full because of Street Pass. It's brilliant, and that's where my next little kind of bit comes into it. And this is going to be the last little bit because it's going to end after this video's gone on way too long. But I've actually ran into the same guy's amiibo 3 times, once a year. I don't know who this guy is, but I've ran into the same guy's amiibo, I should say, same guy's Mii, 3 years in a row. And that's just, I think that's funky. That's another kind of epic little story to it, if you will. But that's where I'm going to wrap this up. I'm just going to have the extra little... I'm sure you can, if, you know, some sort of convention or anything has moved away from you, or if you've had to move away from it, or if it's shut down or whatever, I'm sure you can probably sympathize with me on this point. And it's just... It's such a bummer that it has to come to an end. I know I said it already a few times, but I just want to say it one final time that it's actually a bummer that it's happening. At this point, I still do have 2 other conventions to attend in Ireland, so that's pretty good. There's the MCM, MCM Ireland, which usually happens sometime in the early summer, and there's Dublin City Comic Con as well, so that happens usually later in the summer. So there's still an outlet for all that, but those ones mainly focus more on the broader side of stuff. You know, there's like movies, comics, games, TV shows, pop culture, whatever, all that kind of stuff is always there. There's still some anime and all there as well, but it was always nice that Eirtakon was not only my first convention, and not only my first convention that I got to meet Steve Bloom at, or my only convention I got to meet Steve Bloom at, but it was also the fact that that one mainly focused on anime and games, as well as other stuff too, but they were the main focuses of it. And it's unfortunate. There's still a few other small conventions and all that I might switch over to, like just stuff like Anime Dublin and NomCon, just things like that. So I might have to look into some of that at some point, because I'm gonna need my anime fix anyway. So anyway, that's this extremely way too long video. Let me know in the comment section below if you have had something similar happen to you, if you can feel my pain or not, or, you know, even just general con experiences, whatever you've had, be it some minor little story. You've heard some of mine. They might seem like little small things, but I think they were pretty big and cool to me, and that's why I'm interested in hearing them if you've got stories like that. So let me know all that in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter, details in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.